Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Triple Play, that podcast that's just 1 hour of prank calls. Because this week we watched Ocean's 11, the original, not the remake.
The 1960 version.
Mm-hmm.
Written by Harry Brown, Charles Lederer, I think is how you say that, and also I guess George Clayton Johnson and Jack Golden Russell.
It's directed by Louis Milestone.
And released on August 10th, 1960, the oldest movie we've watched for this. Came out a couple months before Magnificent Seven.
Yeah. I would much rather watch Magnificent Seven again, seven times, before I watch this again.
Right, and this is why, I mean, I think we can both preface this by saying, like, this wasn't that great of a movie, and I think...
I understand now why Steven Soderbergh was like, people just like it because it's old, it's not actually good. Yeah, it's true.
Yep. And I also agree with when he said, I think he said something along the lines of like Ocean's 11 was a really cool concept, just wasn't achieved very well in the original movie, which I totally agree with.
No.
And like when I was watching this, a lot of it I was trying to justify. I was like, well, it's old, and movie techniques weren't like as developed at that point, and they were working with a lot of this stuff. My expectations in 2018 are a lot different than before, but then I remembered like we'd watched Magnificent Seven, and I've seen other movies from the 60s and stuff, and they're better.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
That was the late 60s, I think.
70s, late 60s. There were good movies that come out in this time period. It's not in the time period.
This isn't one of them.
I mean, the first thing that I felt when I started this movie was I felt like I had walked into a room where two people were having a conversation, and I was in the middle of a conversation.
Well, right, and I think what we're going to do now, like we just discussed right before recording, is we're going to go through some of the similarities and differences, plot-wise, character-wise, and just like what happens in the movie, because the 2001 movie is a remake of this.
And is far superior
in
basically every way.
Yep.
This movie is carried, if you can even call it that, by Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, and even still.
But even then, I liked the guy who played Spiros more than any of the other.
Who's Spiros? I'm gonna come clean right now. I don't know anyone's name.
I didn't know Danny Ocean. Right, I didn't know anyone's name except Danny Ocean and Spiros. Spiros was the Greek guy whose character is partially used. He's not one of the 11, but his character is in this movie. But his character is partially used or redone as Reuben.
Yeah.
Because, there's that scene where he has this big mansion and he has the pool in his backyard, and that's obviously redone with Reuben.
The operation.
Right. But unlike Reuben, he's not part of the 11.
Nor is he as interesting as Reuben is, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, no, he's not. But I mean, I just liked his overreaction, and that's something we can touch on right now, is that we just mentioned this on our Blake 7 podcast, Zenith, but like this is 1960, right? A lot of acting at that point was a lot more performative than it is now. A lot of acting now most acting now in movies and TV shows at least attempts at realism, attempts to be realistic, as if you're not watching a movie or TV show. It's as if you're watching, these events actually play out in real life. But acting back then, and this is a remnant of like stage acting that had been built up over hundreds of years, is that like there's an acknowledgement from the actors and the audience that it's just a performance, so they do it more performatively, more over the top, and stuff like that.
There's
which
a lot
is okay. That's
bigger reactions. I think acting nowadays is more designed to be reactive than active. It's less about trying to drive the scene forward by making these big motions. It's more like trying to react to other characters and embodying who you're supposed to be playing. It's supposed to feel very natural. Right.
And that's okay. I mean, that's not one of my big negative points for this movie. It's just something I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think this movie is like absolute garbage, right? I think there's some really cool stuff going on in it. It just wasn't achieved very well.
Well, one of my favorite things about this movie was the title sequence, which is designed by Saul Bass, who was a famous graphic designer from the 60s. He also did the opening sequence to Dr. No, which is the first James Bond movie. There's another movie that came out in the 60s that was like really good and well realized, like Dr. No, From Russia with Love. Like the early Bond movies were all 60s, and those all came out like really good and exciting. They still hold up today. Goldfinger.
Sure.
But I really like the Saul Bass design title sequence. I thought it was really good. It cycles through the numbers 1 to 11 with the people's names on the screen. And then, we cut straight into the middle of like a conversation or something. They've it seemed like they were implying that they'd already come up with the idea for this heist before the movie started, and the movie was just showing them get together, the 11.
And that's basically it's basically the same as this part is the same as how it is in the 2001 version, right? Danny Ocean knows that he wants to go through with this.
Yeah, so he calls up Rusty, his buddy.
Right.
But see, the difference is in the 2001 one, the 11 are all different people who don't know each other. Or they have connections to each other, but they're not, like, they've never done a job together. They're all like, and they're not my friends of a friend, right?
They're not criminals either.
Oh, well, Bashatar.
Okay, well, only one of them is.
And Ocean, because Ocean just gets out of prison at the start of the movie.
Yeah, and Ocean, and the only other one who has like a criminal record is Spiros, and that's why they say he can't be part of their operation because he can't even get into Vegas.
Well, there's the other guy.
There's the other guy
out of prison because the thing is they're basically just getting together their airborne division from World War II, the 82nd Airborne.
Right.
And the one guy apparently ended up in San Quentin for something, and they end up getting him out on like bail or something.
Yeah, he was the one exception to that, like, none of them are criminals idea.
He's also the one who keels over and dies.
Was that him? See, I didn't even...
I think so.
I didn't even know who died at the end. They don't show his body or anything. And the characters, I guess this is a good time to talk about this. The characters are so homogenous in this that I just couldn't tell a lot of them apart.
The only one you can tell apart is Danny Ocean because he has a wife, and he's also cheating on his wife and divorced his wife, but she wants to get back together and he wants to get back together.
Right, the sort of love... or the romantic subplot, which is done as a love triangle in the new one, is a lot more well achieved in that one.
Yeah.
There's also the we'll get into the antagonist of this one, if you can even call him that.
The's an antagonist. That's the final 15 minutes.
That's why I feel like this movie, which, George Clayton Johnson is a known writer, right? He wrote some Star Trek episodes. He wrote Twilight Zone episodes. He wrote Logan's Run. He wrote a bunch of other stuff, and he's just credited a story for this, so I don't know what capacity he actually wrote the script.
Not much. If he's just credited for story, then he didn't do enough of the script, or he may not have even written anything on the script at all.
Yeah, but what I wanted to mention is that this feels like a first draft of a script where they're like writing... and they go, at the end, they bring back what's-his-face as sort of an antagonist-like figure, and they don't go back and be like, oh, wait a minute, like, this is a really cool character who can oppose these guys. Let's go back and rework this movie with him as, like, in a bigger role. They just threw him in at the end when they thought of him or something like that.
Well, because the plot structure of the movie is similar to the 2001 version, where you have the getting the crew together, and then you have the heist. The planning the heist, and then you have the heist.
But this one adds a part 3, which is, like, after the heist.
Yeah, and I was actually going to say that the part 3 after the heist feels a lot like Ocean's 12. Like they took that concept and turned it into Ocean's 12.
Yeah.
But the thing about this movie is that those 3 parts are so heavily like lopsided towards getting the group together because
and the heist is so freaking boring too.
It's almost like they just wanted an excuse to get the Rat Pack on screen.
Right.
Because legitimately the first hour of the movie is just shenanigans by the Rat Pack. The prank calling,
yeah, there's like 5 prank calls in the first hour of the movie.
They're meeting each other at trains, pretending they don't know each other. They're busting the dude out of prison. They're going to antique stores. Like
a lot of this reminded me of a like more poorly executed version of Ocean's 13. Because one of my big problems with Ocean's 13 is like in that movie, the first Ocean's 11 had the con, and there's like a con within a con. The second one expands that to like have a con on the audience itself, right? The third one of the reasons I didn't like it, and it's because it's also doing something different from those two, so it's just down to personal preference. But why I didn't like it is like they just plan the thing and they do it. But a lot of the excitement, I guess, in that movie comes from like seeing this guy get his comeuppance, right, for like screwing for like screwing over Ruben.
Yeah, because Ruben was awesome. Ruben's got to get his vengeance.
But this one kind of did the same thing where it's like they meet, they plan the thing, and they do it.
They have no excuse to rob these casinos is the thing. They come up with this idea and just decide to do it without any real motivation except that they can.
Yeah, you're right. And there's a couple scenes where, one or two of the guys tries to back out and they're like, what are you, chicken?
Yeah, no. When they
turns around Marty McFly style, he's like, what did you just call me?
When they finally get everyone together when they finally get everyone together in the room where they decide to pitch the heist, the guy's like, look, guys, the most important thing is that we all showed up. And that means that we're all in now. We're all in this. You can see everybody looking at each other like, wait, what have we signed up for? The guy's like, here we go. Boom. Las Vegas. The sands, the flamingo, the Sahara, the desert inn.
This is an hour into the movie, by the way.
We're going to rob them all.
All right, one of the things, because the 2001 version, I think spends like at least 25 to 30 minutes getting them together too. I mean, it's done better. But a lot of the reason why I wasn't okay with this is because like the new trilogy focuses on it knows it has a large cast and focuses on a few key characters, right? Like George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Matt Damon are more important. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to say more important, but more fleshed out as characters than the other people, right? The other people are distinct, but they're just part of the 11.
Yeah.
Or 12 or 13 or whatever it is. This one, during the first hour, felt like it tried to go into the backstories and like lives of a lot of these people in a far greater capacity than I thought you could even do in like a two. How long was this? Two hours, 7
minutes.
Yeah, like going into the backstory, and none of them were that interesting either. Like the guy who was sent to prison and he had his son who thought he was in Japan, and some other. And the guy who
I didn't even pick up on any of those plot threads.
The guy whose stepdad finds out about the heist at the end and stuff like that. And none of them were that interesting, really.
Yeah, the mom who finds out about the heist too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so an hour into the movie, after doing multiple prank calls,
they come up with an outline of a plan,
including pretending they're dead. The plan, okay, they don't even have, like in the 2001 one, they encounter a lot of difficulties that they have to overcome to make the heist work. And in this one, they
basically pulled off without a hitch. The worst thing that happens is that there's a drunk woman outside of a door they need to get into.
Yeah, they basically
distract her for a minute.
The electrician just reroutes the wires so that when the power goes down, the cashier doors open instead of the lights turning on.
This is where they got the idea of shutting down all the power in Vegas in the new one.
Yeah.
But obviously in the new one, the heist is much more complicated than just that.
Yeah, which makes it more exciting. Honestly, the more exciting the heist is, the more complicated the heist is, the more exciting it is to watch.
Right, and they don't even need to be in Vegas to shut down the power. They just go out to like the desert where the power lines are located.
Yeah, the guy
and
just bombs the power line. They basically set up two people at each casino, and then right at New Year's...
this was also a mistake because they have scenes where like going from casino to casino, doing the same thing at each casino.
Yeah, because they have 5 casinos, and it's just the same thing in every casino, like identical in every casino.
So in the new one, they achieve this in a far better way, which I'm not exactly remembering, but I think it's like the vault of the one casino they're robbing is also linked.
It's the vault for 3 casinos.
Yeah, right. All owned by what's his name? Forget his name.
Terry Benedict.
Yeah, Terry Benedict. All owned by Terry Benedict. And that's the other thing. Just having an antagonist in Terry Benedict made the new one. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Because we meet the antagonist at the end. We should explain what happens.
Right.
The heist goes off without a hitch. They basically just walk into the cashiers during Auld Lang Syne when the lights are off, shove the money in bags, chuck them in the garbage cans, and the one guy picks them up in the garbage truck and just leaves town. And then the casino owners get together and they hire this guy. What was his name? He was one of the few characters whose names I actually knew. Oh, Duke Santos.
Yeah.
Who's apparently a reformed mobster, but I don't buy it. To hunt him down. And he basically figures out in 5 minutes that these dudes did it.
He figures it out through a series of coincidences, which is like, that's fine, whatever.
Well, because one of them dies. And then he realizes that guy was part of the same, like, 82nd Airborne as one of the other guys who was noticed in Vegas. And then he goes to the one guy's house and talks with their mom. And she's like, yeah, they were all in Vegas this weekend.
But that's his stepson, or soon-to-be stepson, because he's marrying the, what's-his-face's mom.
Yeah. So, and then...
And that's to me, that's like a good setup, right? They could have had this guy be an antagonist, and like they could also add some extra sort of tension between him and... whatever the son's name was, of like he's trying to catch them or he's trying to get the money for himself, and he's also like not cool with, or the son is also like not cool with him being his new stepdad.
Yeah,
that's like something that could really work and something that could be really solid, but not something that
could
actually
be his
happened.
main character through thread for the whole movie. But instead we get Duke Santos shows up in the final 15 minutes, figures out that it was the 82nd Airborne in 5 minutes, and then they realize Duke Santos knows. And instead of giving Duke the money, because Duke tells him,
trying
you
to
can
strike
give me
a deal or something.
Yeah, he's like, you can give me 50%, and then I won't tell the mobsters, the casinos I found you. And they're like, yeah, right. And he's like, 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
So,
and then they come up with a new convoluted plan to like hide the money in the coffin of the guy who died.
It's not that convoluted. They try and hide like a good portion of the money so that their earnings, quote unquote earnings, seem a lot smaller. So they only have to split 50% of whatever they tell Santos that they actually got. So then they can just go dig up his coffin later and get the rest of the money.
Yeah, and the reason why the casino owners go to Santos is because the insurance won't even pay out like 10% of what they lost, and Santos wants 30% of what he brings back to them. So they're like, we'll get more money this way. Anyway, it turns out the guy's getting cremated, so all the money gets burned, and that's how the movie ends.
So. I mean, what do you think about this? Like in the new Ocean's 11 movies, they basically get away with, or there's some sort of resolution where they get away with the con, or what's her name in the second one meets her dad finally.
I mean, that's why I feel like Ocean's 12 is basically the final 15 minutes of this movie, because Terry Benedict goes to the Night Fox and hires him to hunt down the Oceans, or who did the job, and the Night Fox is like, oh, it was the Oceans.
Yeah, a lot of crew. I mean, a lot of the ideas in this are taken into both 11 and 12, and to an extent 13.
Mm-hmm. I mean, robbing the casino floor is definitely from this movie as well. They changed the heist in Ocean's 11 to be the robbing the vault, but in 13, the robbing the floor, pretty similar to the way they do it in here.
Right.
So there's definitely...
Vault works a lot better, honestly.
Yeah, it does. There's definitely a lot of through threads that are taken from this movie into the trilogy, but I think this movie fails in that, one, it doesn't have an antagonist, and two, there's no clear motivation as to why these people are robbing these casinos, except that I guess they just want to, which is fine, but they didn't explain that either, right? That's just something that I'm just guessing is why they're robbing these casinos.
Right. The first hour of this movie feels like you really need to be invested in these characters to care about these interactions that are going on with them, but it doesn't really ever it didn't ever give me a reason to actually even care about like Danny Ocean or whatever. Unlike the remake or reimagining, I guess, that actually, say about it what you will, and I criticized it too, but like the romantic subplot and stuff like that. So
that's why I feel like this movie it feels like walking into the middle of a conversation. It feels like you're supposed to already know who these characters are, and you're supposed to care about these interactions already.
Maybe if you're a big Rat Pack fan, you will. I don't know.
Maybe if you're a big Rat Pack fan, you went to this movie and the movie started and you instantly like, oh yeah, that's the Rat Pack I know. Let's see what they're going to do in this movie.
There is a lot of music like used in this movie.
That's something I wanted to mention. It feels like they only got to license one song, and it was Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin's "Ain't Life a Kick in the Head," because they play it legitimately 4 times in this movie. I counted 3 or 4, and he sings it himself. There's once like at a piano, once in the casino, once when he's with his buddies. Like, stop, play another song, please, God.
Well, they play it over multiple nights too. Which is normal. It's true to life that you'd have the same show multiple nights, but like, yeah, it's a movie. Come on.
Please, just take your creative license and just give me another song. Anything, please. You have like 2 world-renowned singers in your movie with huge back catalogs.
More than 2, 5 at least.
5 with a huge back catalogs. Like you couldn't just Like that was the most irritating thing, was every time he goes, "Ain't life a kick in the head?" I'm like, no,
ain't this song a kick in the head?
And I'm like getting flashbacks to the start of the movie, and I was like, They did play one other song, which is the like explosives expert, when they meet him, is singing another song. Like, I've never heard it before. He's like, it's really not a memorable song at all.
Yeah.
And he's just singing it like a truck stop. He's just on like a stage at a truck stop. Man, this 82nd Airborne like really took a dive off to the war.
Wow. Yeah, I guess. Well,
but like it feels like the movie is like is hinging on the fact that you care about the Rat Pack.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And that's why I think the new movie, the remake, succeeds so well, is because they got together a new ensemble of people who had never worked together like this before, and then it made you care about the ensemble as a whole and not about individual characters. I mean, yeah, I can tell you who my favorite member of Ocean's 11 is, right? But it's not like I like the ensemble. I care about what the group is doing.
Sure.
Whereas in this movie, I don't even care about what individual people are doing. Like, the only person whose name I know is Danny Ocean.
Right.
I don't even think anybody else's name was said.
They were said multiple times, but I didn't pick up on any of them again because the 11 in this are really homogenized.
There's not a lot of distinctive character features between them. I mean, yeah, there's Danny Ocean who's having an affair on his ex-wife, and there's the guy who's going to become the stepson of Duke Santos. But other than that, like
they even look similar, right? It's just a bunch of dudes in suits with like the exact same haircut.
Yeah, that's another thing that the reboot does really well, which we talked about in our episode. The costume designer wanted each character to have a specific look based on where they came from.
They probably, I forget her name, but she probably watched this and be like, we can't do this, guys. We can't do this.
And I know it sounds like we're like bashing everything about this movie, but it's not like a wholly terrible movie. I think it's just a boring movie.
Again, I think there's the potential of a good movie in this, which is why it was remade into a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good story if they provide character motivations and they make you care about the characters, which is something you have to do for, I think, any good creative product.
I don't agree with that, but for this, maybe I do agree with it.
I feel like it's easier to make something good when you care about the characters. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to provide motivation, but you have to at least try to make you care about the characters. Because if I don't care about the characters, do I really care about the story?
I mean, look, I don't know about movies, but a lot of my favorite short stories or books or whatever are not really about character type stuff. But we're not going to get into that. I want to talk about this movie visually too, especially in comparison to 11 and 13, I guess. A lot of this was, and I knew this was going to be the case before I even went into it. A lot of this was just static middle shots of a couple guys on the left, a couple guys on the right, just talking to each other. And that's fine, I guess. It works. It's not a bad way to do. Well, okay, it's a functional type style of shooting the movie. It's not something. You're not looking at something and going what am I even looking at? But at the same time, it gets kind of boring. Whereas the new one uses a lot more new film techniques. I don't really know what they would be called. I'm not an expert on it, but
it's just I don't know.
As far as the sets go, I liked a lot of them.
The sets were really well designed.
The one thing I'll say about the sets, and this is a massive nitpick, so the sets are pretty good when this is my big complaint about them, is that the doors are obviously set doors, because when you have a door, it's never just looking at the door to the room we're in right now, but it's usually never just a slab that you cut out of the wall and put a hinge on and a knob.
Yeah. There's molding around the edges and there's it's set into the wall. It's not a piece cut out of the wall.
Right. But overall, I thought the sets for this were great.
In regards to the directing,
not great, but good.
The directing really kind of annoyed me because it was a lot of static shots, which was a real bummer, because in a heist movie, there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of sweeping shots or a lot of shots with a lot of motion and action. Especially,
when you're getting shots of a casino floor, which, again, they were able to do that more in the new one thanks to Weintraub. So I don't know what kind of freedom. I didn't look up much of the making of this, but I don't know what types of freedoms they had in this. Probably not as much as they did for the new ones.
Even still, it's not like you can even use the age of the movie as an excuse, because like I said, Dr. No, From Russia with Love, those are movies with lots of action sequences and very motive cameras and camera movements. So, I mean, even when they're just prank calling each other, if they're driving, when they're driving down the street, or when you see the Greek guy's house, it doesn't have to just be a static establishing shot from across the road, right? You can pan across the garden, or you can
there's more they could have done.
You can follow the taxi from behind as it drives into the driveway. These aren't very complicated things to do, but they just add a little bit of motion and action to the scene in some way.
Right.
It doesn't have to be just the heist that needs to be spruced up, right? I feel the first hour of getting the group together could have been, if it was a lot more active, I feel it would have been a lot more interesting, maybe.
Sure. Which is basically what you're describing is basically Ocean's 11 2001.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also blackface in this.
Oh yeah.
when they're going to pick up the money, a couple of them
Yeah.
wear blackface.
That was a...
Which is, and it's a joke too. It's like they make a joke out of it as well. And I know...
Which doesn't make it okay.
No, it doesn't make it okay. I know you know what minstrel shows are, right?
Yep. We talked about it in our prequel trilogy episode.
Yeah, and even after minstrelsy was still going on, even after television and stuff, there's actually this Spike Lee movie about, this is a tangent, but this is actually like a cool movie, and I haven't seen the whole thing, unfortunately, and I forget what it's called also, unfortunately, but it's a Spike Lee movie. Came out in, I think, the mid or late 90s, and it's about this guy, this television executive, who's like going to get fired for some reason that he's not okay with, so he has the opportunity to make like his final show or whatever, and he's like, I'll show them, I'll drive this television station into the ground. So he makes a modern day minstrel show and everyone loves it, and like he's rehired, it boosts the channel, and he's like, what the hell is going on? I'll put it in the show notes if you want to check our website, it'll be there. Yeah. But minstrelsy was going on even after the advent of television. I think the final, like, it's probably still going on to some capacity today, either covertly using its stereotypes or just overtly in some way. But, into the 60s, like, you could watch TV and movies and see, like, blackface, like, done in a minstrel style.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's in the 60s, it's kind of a product of its time, which, once again, doesn't make it okay. It was really weird to see it in this movie, though, because I was like, I didn't really see any reason for it to be there.
Well, I mean, this movie had the token black character, which was
that too.
What's his name?
The bomber dude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm forgetting his name. He's famous. He's a singer.
Well, yeah, the whole Rat Pack is famous.
Well, I mean, the whole Rat Pack is not in this.
Oh,
it's Dean Martin. No, it's not Dean Martin.
No.
It's
Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, it's Sammy Davis Jr. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not too familiar with these guys, nor am I familiar with their music. Not the type of music I listen to.
I'm just familiar with Frank Sinatra's music and Dean Martin. And I know Sammy Davis Jr.'s name.
But he's very much like, the token black character in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And they kind of tried not to bring attention to it.
Well, he has his hair straightened as well, and done in the same. He has the same haircut as the other guys too. What'd you say about that? What you want?
Well, it's because everybody in this movie looks the same, right? They put them all in suits. They gave them all the same haircut.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really comes down to, this movie was just boring to me. It was just boring.
Yeah, it's again, a lot of this stuff was cool in concept, which is why I'm glad that
the remake exists.
Was made, because again, it took a lot of these concepts and turned them into a good movie.
Yeah, because it's really easy to take these concepts and make them a good movie, and it's also really easy to take it and make a bad movie. It's a very polarized concept, I think, because it can so easily go wrong or right. And in this case, it went wrong, and in 2001, it went right. So, although I think the 2001 one had the benefit of having this movie already, and they could see all the mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and then make it better and do it, quote, right, unquote.
Yep.
I'm not sure I have much else to really say on it. My biggest complaint was that they played the same damn song over and over again, and also that the directing was just really uninteresting and kind of uninspired in a lot of places, and a lot of static shots in the script kind of meandered a lot. Like, those three, I think, are my biggest complaints about this movie.
I mean, we didn't even touch on the acting. I mean, obviously these guys are singers, not actors. But
were they acting?
I mean, they were actors, but like, the acting isn't even like that great.
The acting is just them really just doing their usual buddy thing, right? it's almost like, oh God, I don't want to draw comparisons to ourselves because it makes it sound conceited. But like, when our podcast started, a lot of it was just us going on a lot of tangents, just waxing lyrical about random nonsense. And then eventually we figured out how to actually stay on topic and draw in things to be related to the episode at hand.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is it feels like
question
they just put a camera in front of these dudes and we're just like, just chill, just relax.
They Larry David it.
David did it. Basically. I mean, yeah, kind of. Like, this is almost like Curb Your Enthusiasm. They put them in the situation and told them to improv almost. Like, I'd be curious to actually see what the script that they were working from actually looks like.
It was probably a fully fleshed out script that they were following. I don't
I'm curious
imagine
to
that
look at it, not
much of this was
only
improvised.
to see what they wrote for them, but how closely they actually did follow it. If they just threw it out and improvised it all, right?
I don't know. Overall, I'd say only watch this if you're like a really big fan of the
remake,
and only if you want to see like where it came from, basically.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe if you're like a really big movie fan, because I do think it's an important picture in the history of cinema.
Really, influential is it really?
Not influential, but just in the fact that like, it's the Rat Pack together, and it's a movie that.
But they have other movies together.
Yeah, but the Ocean's 11, I think, is probably the most famous one together.
Well, probably because it was remade into like a pretty good movie.
Which is part of why it's like history of cinema type
all
thing.
Right, fine, yeah.
Yeah, other than that, I really don't have much else to say about it. Not really a reason to watch it, and we've kind of exhausted all of the Ocean's franchise at this point, except for Ocean's 8, which is coming out.
Well, hopefully we'll make a 9 and 10, so.
Yeah, then they'll have a sex trilogy. 6 movies.
Yeah.
Plus the original.
Yeah.
They could keep making these movies forever. If they're on the level of quality that Ocean's 11, 12, and 13 are, then they can make these movies forever, and I'll keep watching them.
Sure.
Once we end up with an original Ocean, with a 1960s Ocean's 11 in this franchise, I'm out. Anyway, you have anything else to say?
No, that's it from me.
You can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the Rat Pack. Why are they called the Rat Pack?
I don't know. There's probably some good reason behind it.
You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Triple Play. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next month we're watching the first 3 Purge movies, I guess. But until then, the end.